Hello, welcome to the critical move of Telesur. Against skeptics' bets on a cordial relationship between Mexico's president and the current White House tenant, the recent meeting in the U.S. sealed and gave the green light to the free trade agreement known as USMCA, a substitute for NAFTA. How did it get here? What phases? What ups and downs did this path go through? What geopolitical implications, not only between the three nations covered by the agreement, but also beyond its borders, does it have? Let's deploy the board. It starts the first move. On July 8, the presidents of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, and the United States, Donald Trump, signed a commercial treaty with Canada known as USMCA in areas of the White House. Let's remember the declaration of both presidents in this context. Working alongside President López Obrador, we are taking this relationship to higher levels, building a powerful economic and security partnership. Together, we have addressed many of the most complex problems facing our countries, problems that were unresolved for many years and should have been resolved before we came here. We want to thank Canada. I will be speaking with its Prime Minister shortly. While NAFTA cut wages and eliminated jobs, this new pact includes innovative labor protections for workers in both nations. This historic agreement will bring countless foreign jobs to North America, and our countries will be major beneficiaries. It is the largest, fairest, and most advanced trade agreement ever reached by any country, and it will bring enormous prosperity to American, Mexican, and Canadian workers. We also made a great deal with China, but this is the biggest trade agreement ever made. With this signing, we commit ourselves to close and continue the friendship between the United States and Mexico. We accelerate our progress for a better tomorrow. Certainly, in the history of our relationships, we have had disagreements, and there are grievances that are still not forgotten. No, but also, we have been able to establish tacit or explicit agreements of cooperation and coexistence. I have also learned that the history, geopolitics, neighborhood, and economic circumstances of both nations have naturally prompted a process of migration of Mexicans to the United States, and a community of nearly 38 million people has been formed here, including the children of Mexican parents. This is a community of good, hard-working people who came to earn an honest living and who have contributed much to the development of this great nation. As President of Mexico, instead of grievances against me, and more importantly, against my country, we have received from you understanding and respect. Some thought that our ideological differences would inevitably lead to confrontation. Fortunately, that bad omen was not fulfilled, and I believe that in the future there will be no reason or need to break off our good political relations and friendship between our governments. The great absentee from this meeting was the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who on July 3rd said, "We are still discussing with the American side whether a trilateral summit next week makes sense. Obviously, we are concerned by the subject of aluminum tanks and steel that the U.S. has launched. We are also concerned about the health situation regarding the coronavirus that still affects our three countries. Let's locate on the map the area covered by this new free trade agreement between the United States, Mexico, and Canada, and the geostrategic implications it involves. USMCA, economic integration. The USMCA is a free trade agreement established between Mexico, the United States, and Canada, which entered into force on July 1st. It emerges as a modification of the old North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. The three countries make up almost the entire northwest hemisphere of the planet, with an area of at least 21,320,219 square kilometers, so it constitutes almost 4.8% of the total surface of the Earth. The area is of geostrategic importance, both because of its size and its location, which allows it to connect with the world's main trade routes and facilitates entry to other continents. As a whole, this triad has access to the Pacific, Atlantic, and Arctic Oceans. Thanks to Mexico, the bloc has an assured entrance to Central America through Guatemala and Belize, as well as to the Caribbean. Through the United States, the USMCA is connected to Russia by the Bering Strait to Greenland. In addition, the state of Alaska and Canada allow the group of countries to have an entry to the privileged area comprising the Arctic Circle. Among the main natural resources of the area are oil, gas, gold, zinc, aluminum, lead, nickel, and uranium. The automotive, chemical, and energy industries also play a fundamental role in the economy of these countries. The USMCA pursues as its main objective the expansion of the region free of tariffs, grouping a market of 492 million people, a gross domestic product of $25.9 billion, and a commercial exchange of $1.17 million. In general, the three countries have marked linguistic, cultural, and political differences, but the pact aims to bring them together commercially. Although USMCA, which emerged after the reformulation of the NAFTA, has certain similarities with its predecessor, there are significant changes in the most relevant chapters. Let's review. USMCA is a modification of the old North American Free Trade Agreement, which dates back to 1994. This renegotiation was carried out between 2017 and 2018 by its member states and informally concluded with the terms of the agreement on September 30, 2018. It was signed on October 1st of that year by Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the Presidents of the United States Donald Trump and Mexico Enrique Peña Nieto by then, during a side event of the G20 summit in Buenos Aires. However, the agreement had to be ratified by the legislative branches of each nation party. Mexico was the first to do so on June 19, 2019, followed by the United States, which ratified it 6 months later on December 19. Canada began its ratification process on January 27, 2020. Unlike NAFTA, which included only 22 articles, USMCA covers 34. For example, with respect to the automotive sector, the regional content was 62.5%, regardless of high-wage areas, and when it was manufactured, was increased to 75%, and manufacturing must take place in a high-wage zone. To resolve disputes, trilateral panels had to be organized first. Now they will be bilateral. That is, in the event that the two other members have differences, they will have to resolve them between them in a partial manner. The agreement was permanent, and in case of differences, the chapter in dispute was negotiated directly. The USMCA proposes that the agreement will have a duration of 16 years, but it will be renewed every 6 years. The fight against corruption, which was not included in the NAFTA, was incorporated by the 3 USMCA signatory countries. It was also agreed to abide by market exchange rates and do not make exchange rate manipulations. NAFTA also did not promote labor policies. Now, USMCA will promote transparency in contract law. With respect to the energy sectors, USMCA safeguards Mexican security and sovereignty in this matter. In addition, the patent on biotechnological medicines was extended and went from 8 to 10 years. As the USMCA depends on the current economic reality, sovereignty it proposes with the new rules for electronic commerce, financial services, and intellectual property. I'd like to suggest you the reading of an article titled "The Trump-Andres Lopez Meeting is a Strategic Triumph of Reasons Over Politics," written by John M. Archimat and posted on our digital site Telesur on July 7. Trump was elected in 2016 with an explicitly anti-Mexican platform. He called Mexicans violators and threatened to end the North American Free Trade Agreement while vowing to build an impenetrable, physical, tall, powerful, and beautiful wall on the border with Mexico. In contrast, López Obrador, as a presidential candidate, embarked on a tour of the United States in 2017 to express his solidarity with Mexican migrants threatened by Trump's draconian immigration policies. The Mexican leader called Trump a neo-fascist and filed international lawsuits against the White House at both the United Nations and the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. Once López Obrador was elected president in 2018, the expectation was that there would be a train crash between the two heads of state, spoiling a long history of constructive binational collaboration. But surprisingly, Trump and the newly elected Mexican president have actually gotten along very well. Trump, of course, has continued his insults against Mexicans and immigrants and has put pressure on the Mexican government to control the flow of migrants to the north. However, the U.S. president has not taken a single action against the López Obrador government or violated Mexico's sovereignty, which is no small thing considering the recent trend in the White House toward neo-imperialistic policies, as in Venezuela or Iran, for example. The greatest risk to the bilateral relationship was a possible end to the free trade. Trump promised again and again to end the NAFTA, calling it a job-killing failure, and López Obrador and the Mexican left in general had for decades blamed the NAFTA for destroying the countryside or fragmenting national industrial policy. Miraculously, the two presidents reached an agreement and the new treaty between Mexico, the United States, and Canada was born. Both Trump and López Obrador put their ideologies aside and worked together to put together a new version of the agreement that would facilitate the growth and prosperity of an increasingly integrated North American economy. If the NAFTA has not been replaced by the USMCA, the prospects for economic recovery after the COVID-19 pandemic would be even more worrisome. If Trump and López Obrador had fallen into temptation of tweeting political bravado and sterile competition, the economies of both Mexico and the United States would be on the verge of collapse today. Fortunately, reason and long-term self-interest have prevailed. The radical contrast between the policies and ideologies of these two leaders only makes the historical importance of this summit more apparent. Despite the forces pushing the two countries apart, our mutual connections are even stronger. There's another suggestion for you to read. It's an article titled "Mexico, China, and the U.S. and Other Geopolitical Perspectives of the USMCA," written by Laura Itzel Domat and published on the Russian agency website Sputnik on July 7. The entry into effect of the treaty between Mexico, the United States, and Canada, USMCA, marks the beginning of a new phase in the integration of the three countries that make up the Northern Triangle of America and consequently could also shape the panorama of trade exchange at a global level. The launch of the USMCA cannot be separated from the political economic context that preceded it. The economic dispute between the current U.S. government and China, a conflict that eventually could affect the trade relations of the countries that integrate it. The immediate geopolitical implication in the relationship with China is that the participation of those non-democratic states is questioned, specifically stated in the treaty. This would influence Mexico to have partial bilateral relations with China at the commercial level with the framework of the USMCA. In addition to this situation, the proximity of the governments of Donald Trump and Andrés Manuel López Obrador is aimed at deepening the relationship between the two countries, which could limit Mexico's room for maneuver in establishing new trade relations to strengthen its domestic economic in the long term. In the USMCA, there is a clause of rules of origin that implies giving priority to input relations between the members of the North American region. Therefore, this closes the door to the entry of inputs from China. Ana Esther Ceseña, coordinator of the Latin American Geopolitics Observatory, told Sputnik. Given that the socioeconomic conditions of the three countries that make up the USMCA are not the same, the relationship established is of an asymmetrical nature. Consequently, the limitation established in the USMCA could cause Mexico not only to expand its economic relationship with the United States, to whom more than 70% of its foreign trade, but also to deepen its economic dependence on the country with which it shares the northern border. For Valdez-Ugalde, this discouraging scenario could be regulated with the diversification of Mexican exports and the generation of conditions that allow investment, national and foreign, in the development of infrastructure projects of the state. The current confrontation between the governments of Donald Trump and Xi Jinping will mark the beginning of the USMCA unless Joe Biden of the Democratic Party wins the next U.S. elections and the trade dynamics with China are reconfigured. In spite of this, Valdez-Ugalde said that the USMCA does not have enough potential to reconfigure the current geopolitical panorama in terms of a new economic dispute between the allied countries. In contrast, Ana Esther Ceseña said that the reactivation of the free trade agreement, together with the mega projects in southeast Mexico promoted by López Obrador, could be oriented to reconfiguring the geopolitical panorama of the North American region in relation to the world. In this case, thinking about North America, and now with the revitalization of the USMCA, since the U.S. and more so with the idea of the mega projects in the South, the United States is very interested in that whole region having a shield, a security envelope where it can put its hand. This would allow the United States to have more interference in the migrant control policy that has been established on that border, and that would stop at the barrier of the Transmithian corridor. But it also allows it to have control to that transmission corridor that would really be a strategic point for future trade, as well as for the territorial reorganization of the continent, said the coordinator of the Latin American Geopolitics Observatory. Well, as you can see, conflicting opinions that have as line the geopolitical consequences of the recently approved and implemented USMCA will be the starting point to begin the analysis very soon. Stay with us. Let's take our first break, but remember there's a strategic move in social media. With the conciliatory speech, Donald Trump and López Obrador sealed without the presence of Justin Trudeau the USMCA free trade agreement that replaces the expired NAFTA. How is North America placed after this commercial armor? Leave your opinion. Let's take a short break. We'll be back soon.
From here to beyond the South. From here to the Caribbean or further north. Where can I see news connecting the whole South? From Washington. From Mexico. From Caracas. From Quito. From Havana. You can always see the news from a new vision, connecting the global South. Only on Telesur. Follow our program minute by minute. Our signal in audio format is now also available on our website. Get the latest updated facts and news emerging around the world from a Latin American reliable angle. Telesur, connecting the global South. Telesur English presents a weekly program to discuss the political, economic and social issues affecting the Caribbean community. We'll challenge stereotypes and unpack the diversity of the region through the analysis of unique cultures, religions and art. We Caribbean. Wednesdays. Only on Telesur.
La relación entre Estados Unidos y México nunca ha sido más estrecha que en este momento. Aunque el pueblo estaba apostando en contra de que esto sucediera,
although the people were betting against this happening, we have never been more united. We are doing a tremendous job together. We are friends, partners, and neighbors. Our cooperation is based on mutual trust and respect between our two countries. He has treated us as what we are, a dignified, free, democratic, and sovereign country. Long live the friendship of our two nations. Long live the United States of America. Long live Canada. Long live our America. Long live Mexico. Long live Mexico. Long live Mexico.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
As we have said, the new North American Trade Treaty, USMCA, was scheduled to enter into force on July 1st. Let's make a chronology of the ups and downs that this tripartite pact has gone through. After his election as U.S. President, Donald Trump threatened to withdraw his country from the North American Free Trade Agreement, known as NAFTA, if the terms were not negotiated. Since August 2017, Washington, D.C. and Mexico City served as the setting for the start of those negotiations. During 4 rounds, differences in the resolution of trade disputes between the parties became more acute. So it was decided to extend the talks with sensitive pending issues, such as the automotive industry. The 5th round was held under a new modality. No presidents or ministers, only technicians and negotiators. The year 2017 closed without concrete agreements, and with an agonizing NAFTA due to the differences between Mexico, the United States, and Canada. The negotiations were resumed in 2018 amid threats of Trump and the application of taxes to their steel and aluminum imports by 25% and 10%, excepting Mexico and Canada, with the condition that they finalize the pact in May of that year. Faced this scenario, Mexico protested the U.S. intention to condition the signing of the treaty to a hard unit of migration. On May 31, the White House Senate carried out the threat and imposed the tariffs. In response, Mexico suspended preferences on U.S. products and filed a complaint with the World Trade Organization. Canada also reacted by applying the same measure to dozens of products from the U.S. The G20 summit in Argentina was the stage for the presidents of the 3 countries to sign the USMCA, replacing the NAFTA in force since 1994. In June 2019, the Mexican Senate approved the treaty. 6 months later, the U.S. House of Representatives approved it, and it went to the Senate, which on January 16 of this year ratified it. In February, the U.S. announced that if Mexico did not comply with the provisions imposed on labor and environmental matters, unilateral tariffs would be imposed, as it did with China. In April, the Mexican Chamber of Deputies approved the labor reform proposed by President Andrés López and began the final stage of the implementation of the free trade agreement that was signed between the presidents of the United States and Mexico at the White House on July 8. We start the analysis in our critical move. We have from Mexico Bernardo Mendez Lugo, Executive Director of Pro-Migrate Foundation, and from the United States, Jim Early, Council's Member of Institute of Political Studies from Washington, D.C. Welcome both of you to our critical move. Well, as you can see, we have over on the geopolitical this recent entered free trade agreement between Mexico, Canada, and the United States. Who is winning? Who is going to lose with this USMCA? Are the three countries on equal conditions? What do you think, Bernard? Thank you so much, Ray Gomez, for this invitation to participate in Telesur. As America with no boundaries, we think we cannot back down on what was agreed. We are interested that Mexico to maintain, we can say that possibility to reactivate investments and to have a bigger and particularly improvement now that we have been really hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. And we have hope that we can be closer and stay more united with Canada. We think that as countries, we haven't had that bilateral unity in front of the United States. Historically, as both countries, it has been privileged that bilateral relations, when the truth is that we could have had a bigger power of negotiation if the United States in some of the topics, and as it's known, Canada in recent months and weeks, it has problems with aluminum and steel. That is one of the reasons with a relation that have been happening between the governors of the two countries. That would be related to the issue of how Mexico could take advantage, and also what is the Mexican working class. I think it's a very important element. Well, stay with us for more few minutes. Let's bring to the topic to James. James, very controversial has been this meeting between President Andrés Manuel López and President Donald Trump in the White House. Why do I say controversial? Because many even opposers to the government, they have bet that this would be the opportunity for the Mexican government to say, right on the face of Donald Trump, some disagreements that have happened during the history of these two countries. But instead of that, we have a nice speech and a nice conversation between the two presidents. Also, we see also from the president's side, Donald Trump. Well, how did you see this? Well, it is very hard to understand President Obrador position that seems like he is cooling down President Trump. As on the previous comment, it's strategic about it's about taking it when it comes to Canada. Both countries have received threats from Donald Trump, and it seems to me that Obrador is like living in a parallel world. Like, first of all, introduce himself inside his own country as an individual. There are many contradictions. A lot of their teams are angry because for a very long time, this just looked like a strategy through his strategic team and the party. And it is also hard to understand that why in this moment, which is probably the most weak for Donald Trump, as he is taking the position right now without receiving something in concrete. So, he is also leaving his strategic position in Mexico, which to become an axe to all Latin Americans and left-wing actors, and also to present the country as an axe between the United States and its threats to Latin America. And it didn't present anything about the economic world, about the sanctions against Venezuela, against Cuba, or against its neighbor Nicaragua. Because what are the motivations? It is very, very hard to understand. And also he is placing himself inside the weak Trump without placing himself among Trump and Democratic Party, despite that Obama offended very much Obama and earned the nickname of Sport in Commander because of migrants with no documentations in the country. So part of the problem that has generated this is because of what you just said, because many people, also in social media and also some experts, says that the historical differences and disagreement between Mexico and the United States could not have place among a moment like this where the destiny of financial destiny is in stake, especially in this context where it's been so hidden by the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, I think it's part of the understanding this whole situation about the pandemic. He is taken to open class. We must take a look to the old commercial treaty. The minor producers, the corn producers, it's not a free trade between the United States and Mexico. We have never had a free market because the government of the United States have supported with government resources. So, who is winning in Mexico? The elite class, which accompanied Obrador here, and the others who controls the economy. So it is very, very hard to understand why those who want to place himself among such a weak situation, this being the concrete policy in this moment, to Donald Trump, which is a very huge danger to Latin America and also to Canada. It is it's a very curious situation of Obrador's motivations. Mexican workers hasn't won. They will won with this new trade agreement. Thank you so much, James. Bernardo, we have Canada's side also marked by the absence of its Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. He announced it and he didn't say. He said, we not agreed to participate on a meeting in Washington. Will they be able to cool down the situation between both presidents in order to this new agreement reaches a new port? Well, definitely for this tightly relation that Canada has with the United States, they should have an understanding roots always. We have to consider that we have less than 150 days freezing the elections in the United States, and on this context, we have to highlight the presence of President López Obrador. And according to statistics and trends with the pandemic and along with a lot of other internal problems, including other actors inside the Republican Party. This is a non-encouraging panorama to President Trump to win the elections. So we have to take a look at scenario, and it is very important to work very hard in the case of having a Democrat president in functions starting on January next year. Thank you so much, Bernardo. I thank you, and I also thank James for your time for our critical move related to the USMCA. Till next time, let's take another break in our critical move. Remember, there is a strategic move in social media for you to participate and leave your opinion about our topic today. With a conciliatory speech, Donald Trump and López Obrador sealed, without the presence of Justin Trudeau, the USMCA free trade agreement that replaces the expired NAFTA. How is North America placed after this commercial armor? Stay with us. We'll be back soon. After his return to his country and during his usual press conference, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador explained that the USMCA is trying to reduce imports in Mexico. What is proposed with the new agreement is to diminish that deficit and to balance the commercial relationship. That what we are now importing as a region of the rest of the world, we can produce in North America, and we have everything. We have everything to do it. President Andrés López expressed that another of the commitments established in the USMCA is the guarantee to the labor rights within the companies, considering this as a novelty. What distinguishes this new agreement is the treatment to the workers. It is contemplated that they improve the salaries, the labor conditions, that the right of the workers is guaranteed, that to the union democracy all this was not contemplated previously. It cannot have abuses against workers because that would take to that company to be sanctioned. I had previously played these sounds because now I'm going to talk with another Mexican, Dr. Alejandro Alvarez Bellar, doctor in sociology and economics, with a long knowledge of the reality of his country. It's an honor to have you in our critical move. How are you? Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be here. We see how President Andrés Manuel goes with the objective to give green light to the project that substitute the NAFTA. How do you see when it comes to improvement steps? Well, I think that this is a little bit like repeating what it was the USMCA came to be at first. Let's remember it came out as the big opportunity to generate jobs for Mexicans and to slow down migration currents. That was the purpose and the goal. And if we remember that on the original version of the USMCA, it was a safeguard regarding labor and environmental matters. So that's why came the so-called parallel agreements with environmental issues. The truth is that not one nor the other had some significant results. They provided the asymmetry of powers in the United States. For instance, in the Mexican countryside, they lost 3.5 million of jobs. In the case of industry that were lost, also almost 1 million jobs of manufacture due to the destruction, because they were not on condition of competition, and also for national productive chains and all the orientation to export, all that became dominant. Now Trump said that the NAFTA was a deeply negative agreement to the United States, when the truth is that it was the main beneficiary of the agreement. And it benefited in that they were going to finish with the NAFTA. And the truth is that they prefer to just change the name and add some chapters, that are simply there, proposing new routes for the commercial relation. Now the matter is that on global relationship in the region, for Mexico it's overwhelming, but taking into account the relationships with the rest of the world, the region, this idea of everything now is going to be produced in the region, within the region, I'm afraid that it's like playing ahead of time. And in the contest enters precisely China in the relationship that establishes the Asian country and Mexico. According to analysts, we were talking about it, that the USMCA can become like some sort of a handcuff that they want to use on Mexico, so they cannot expand their relationship with Beijing. Well, the agreement specifically have two articles that express that the signing countries of the USMCA, they cannot sign agreements with countries that have no trade economies, and those one who do not have this label of trade market. Who are those? China and Cuba. This is a very dangerous situation. Certainly, this leads the road to Washington and said that Mexico was going to have the relationship open to the rest of the world. And this is a declaration that wouldn't be undermined. And this restriction is to move forward on free trade agreements. I think that the part of integration, the higher integration with the materials of North America, it's going to suffer some adjustments, because, for instance, the part that it's speaking about implementing higher salaries. Let's say that if workers, Mexican workers, have a similar productivity of the American workers in the automobile industry, but they have salaries 10 way down, that gives an adjustment average. I was reading an article yesterday about that Japan was willing to increase twice and three times the salaries in their in its companies in Mexico before changing the production to the United States, which tells us that this process of global change, specifically connected to Asia, is not going to be that simple. So in a way that the USMCA comes with a problem that doesn't change in respect of the US. So for me, this is just an AFTA that, from my point of view, was already expired. Truth is that the Mexican economy in the last 30 years hasn't reached over 2% annually. And for an economy such as the size of Mexico's, with a population that claims more sources of jobs, employment. So I think that the salary crisis, the problems of environmental. Now that you talk about environmental rules, between a conversation between Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, they were talking about renewable energy. According to some press, it have become a controversial subject between these two countries since the Mexican administration decided to change regulations and difficult the foreign investments in the sector. So to what point there is a contradiction here? And I ask you this because they're still missing the third leg of this table, which is Canada. We saw for Prime Minister Trudeau's position regarding this visit to the United States. In this context, in the White House, President Trump said that he's still planning on having a conversation with the Prime Minister from Canada. So not everything is still said on this USMCA. That is correct. I think that it's even more delicate. I think that the problem is that Trudeau didn't want to assist to the meeting in Washington, saying that formally that the COVID-19 pandemic kept him because that would send a wrong message to his people by sending a wrong message about traveling. But the truth is that under threat, especially on the sector of aluminum production, and I believe that also other matters in the liquid production sector. So I think it's a problem that it is still unresolved, and that's why he hasn't assisted to the meeting in Washington. That says that there's no reason to minimize it, because it is reflecting that the relation is more controversial than what they intend to show. In fact, the relationship with the United States, there have been a huge break-in in issues such as renewable energies. There are other topics or matters, for instance, around the topics of security. And another issue is the energy. And this is my personal opinion, maybe I'm wrong, but the United States see the region, not only Mexico, but also Mexico and Venezuela as part of one package. And I was reading some comments of head of State Department that say that it didn't want to change its position over Venezuela. And on this sense, I haven't seen anything on the energy issues, on statements. And I think that the Mexican government is still holding a dignified position an energetic position, strong position. And in the reference that Obrador made in his speech to President Trump, that President Roosevelt has supported the decision of expropriating the oil companies back then. It was reading about what is going on right now, because many of the interests are mainly of Spanish capital, and they really have signed some contracts that are bleeding out the state company that has the majority of generation and distribution of energy. That is the condition of electricity. So there is an issue, a controversial issue. And López Obrador said that you, also Rupert, should step aside in the argument we have in the energetic companies in Spain. And López Obrador said that, well, as always, time, we need more time. I'd like to keep on talking to you, but we're running out of time, so thank you so much for your time, and see you soon. Dr. Alejandro Alvarez was with us. Let's go to conclusions.
Atrás quedaron los augurios de posibles
Predictions of possible tensions between the far-reaching politician Andrés López and the controversially explosive Donald Trump. The latent disagreement between the New York City magnate and the Canadian Prime Minister, tension that goes back to the NATO summit, remains unresolved. Will the cordial treatment between the White House in anticipation of receiving a new tenant and Mexico be maintained? Will China be the bone of contention in this relationship? Will Washington and Ottawa smooth over? Does North America really shielding itself with this renewal, with the makeup of the outdated NAFTA? The political will seems to be on the table. We have to wait and see how far the economic will goes on truly sovereign basis. For today, we close the geopolitical board.